And welcome back to my channel. Or if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Rusty, and this is my channel where I spotlight my favorite movies, mostly horror, and my favorite music, mostly metal, if I can ever get around to doing that sometime. And welcome to day 7 of my space horror festival, where I chose 8 movies from my collection that are space horror related that I really love. And yes, today we are going to talk about Sputnik. I really like this movie. This movie was really cool. I don't know if you've heard of it, but this is Sputnik. Now, Sputnik was released in 2020. This is going to be kind of fun, watching me try to do this, because it's fucking Russian. So, it was released in 2020, and it was directed by Egor Abramenko. It was written by Oleg Malovichko, Aubrey Zolotarev, and it stars, and this is, I'm so sorry, you people, because you're really good actors, and I hate to do this to you. It stars Oksana Akinshina, Fedor Bondarchuk, and Pyotr Fyodorov. I actually think those are correct. Fedor Bondarchuk. Oh my god. So anyway, that's just what you're going to have to do if you ever fucking review or talk about foreign movies. You're going to end up in that situation right there. Enjoy. I'll be laughing at you when you have to do it too. So, Sputnik takes place in 1983. When 2 cosmonauts, Konstantin and Kirill, are coming down, they're about to land, and they start the re-entry program, and something goes wrong, and they end up crashing, and you hear something outside the lander. You know, they end up crashing in Kazakhstan, and you see something, or they hear something outside the lander, and the next thing you know, you have this farmer like coming up to them, and one of them is sitting there like dead with his like brains eaten out and ripped off, and it was very gross to start a movie with a really gory scene like that. And Konstantin, who is alive, so it was the other guy that got like ripped, his head like ripped open. And what's weird is the way he was sitting. He was just like sitting there, leaned over, and his helmet was like busted off, and like the whole top of his head was gone. It was very disturbing. So Konstantin, he survives, and he's taken to a research facility, or that's where he wakes up. And then we're introduced to Tatiana. Now, Tatiana is being interviewed and disciplined because for medical negligence, because she was accused of being too rough with a patient. From what you gather from the questioning of her, it was a 17-year-old who was having some kind of seizures, and she kind of like figured out that it wasn't really. It was some kind of psychological problem he was having due to his mother's overprotective abuse or something. I don't know. It was very weird. But anyway, she's in trouble. And then she's approached outside of the room, of the boardroom, by this colonel, who tells her that he's got a job for her. He's got a patient that he wants her to see. And he ends up, she's like, why do you want me to do it? And he's like, well, because you you obviously do whatever it takes to try to help your patient, and that's what we're looking for. And he's got amnesia, and we want you to take a look and tell us if it's real. So she agrees, and she goes, especially since he also offered to kind of like make a little bit of this trouble she's in go away. So she agrees, and she goes, and she observes like the doctor, the at this military base. She observes like that doctor like trying to hypnotize the guy, and he can't get him to get him hypnotized, and he swears that he has no idea what's going on. She meets with him. He tells her about his loss of memory, that all he can remember is starting the reentry program and waking up in the hospital, that he doesn't remember anything that happened. So she comes out and she's like, well, she tells the colonel that, yeah, it probably is amnesia, but he's definitely got really, really bad PTSD, and the way y'all are keeping him in here like some kind of medical experienced prisoner probably isn't helping at all anyway. And anyway, yawn, this is really boring, and I just prefer to go back home. So he's like, okay. So he tells her that, okay, you can, the troops go out tomorrow and they'll take you back. And so she settles in that night to go to sleep and wait for the morning to go back home. Now he drops by though, like before she goes to sleep, he drops by and he asks her to come with him, that he needs to show her something. So she goes, okay, so she goes down there and they go to Konstantin's room, his little thing, and you notice something different this time, and that is he's asleep. But there's like this big plexiglass, so it's like the room that he sleeps in of the room that he stays in, sort of like a little apartment. That part where he's actually asleep has got this plexiglass, right? So they ask her to watch, and then we see something really weird start happening, and he starts like convulsing, and then he like some really weird maneuvers, as he's almost like thrown and flipped out of bed, and then he like falls on his knees, and it's a really gross scene, but like this thing comes out of his mouth and is laying on the floor, and then it looks about that long, and it was tubular and kind of looked like some kind of pupa, chrysalis. Some might say pupa. I'm starting to talk like Hannibal Lecter. But then it starts to move, and it comes out of its mucous membrane, and it's this fucking little creature, right? And it's like, it's cute, but it's scary at the same time, and it's like, I can't say that about Alien, you know what I mean? The Xenomorph or Predator or anything like that. So I mean, it's not, it's actually cute, sort of like Gremlins, like that thing is cute until it like gets wet and turns into Spike or something, but this creature is like really scary, but at the same time it's kind of cute. It's just really weird. But so she is totally freaked out, hyperventilating, like what the fuck, right? And she ends up like freaks out, and she goes out there, and he comes out and talks to her about how this is what's been going on, and that's why she's really here, because they need some way to separate this thing. He lets her know that this thing comes out of him every night at this time, but like this 30-minute period, every night in the middle of the night, this thing comes out of him. And it's sort of like a parasite is what he thinks it is. and they need some way to separate it from him. And that's what she's really doing there. She's like, I'm not a fucking biologist. What are you, and she really doesn't understand, her being a psychiatrist and all, why this is like her business, She's also a little pissed too. She's like, this is some heavy Russian secret stuff here. I never want to be involved in Russian secret stuff, because you end up being taken care of, if you know what I'm saying. So you got that kind of dynamic going on. And then, so they want her to do that. She agrees, though. She views all the material about this parasite, or maybe a symbiont, or whatever it could be called. Her and Dr. Jan, his last name is Reiger, but Jan, her and him don't get along, and she has to try to calm him down a little bit by going, look, I got no interest in your job, your Nobel Prize for this shit. I'm curious and I want to help, but that's all. I'm not here to take your job. So, she goes back in the next session knowing this. And of course, Konstantin, to all of their knowledge, has nothing. He knows nothing. He's got amnesia. So this thing is coming out of you in the middle of the night and going back in you, and you wake up and you have no idea that this thing is living in you, right? So it's a pretty weird situation to be in. So she goes in, and in this time, though, she tells him, well, the real reason that they've got you here is because they think that you're a psycho and that you killed your co-pilot and you don't want to admit it. This, of course, infuriates him, enrages him, and that's exactly what she wanted, because it allows certain hormones. When you get enraged, it turns out, there are certain hormones and things that can be measured that are released in your body, and she needed to do that, so she intentionally pissed him off, and got this done so that she could get some readings on certain hormones. So she asks him them to give him a better room, sort of more normal room with a TV and stuff like that, instead of being like this caged animal, and that she believed that would help. So they do that. The next night, when the thing comes out, she is there, and she actually wants them to lift the glass, because she noticed that the thing seemed to react to the man's toy. He's got a little Cupid doll kind of thing. And when she asked him about it, he said that it's good luck to take something like that, personal item, with you into space. So that's why he had it. And this thing seemed to react to it. So she wanted them to lift the glass so that she could go in there. And she's a brave woman, because I wouldn't have been nowhere near that fucking place or that thing. But she goes in there and she gives, she puts it down, and it comes and it curls up around it and stuff like that. And she then makes a very idiotic decision that I'd like to touch this thing. She reaches out to touch it, and it nearly gets her ass. It cuts her leg up. It nearly is like, don't touch me there. So she then sees him the next day, and believes, she tells him that she believes that this thing, this creature, is not only a parasite, but that it has now become like a symbiote, that this thing is actually mentally attached to him as well as physically, that this thing reacted to that toy like he would have reacted to that toy. It curled up around it like it loved it, and it loved it because he loves it. It meant something to the creature because it meant something to him. And she believed that this thing maybe would shed him like a skin soon if they didn't find some way to separate it, to separate it. So that's when the colonel admits to her that he's been lying to the government to save Konstantin because they've been wanting him put down, this creature. But he has other plans. So he had been lying and, could she help before he is ordered to destroy them? So she goes and makes a deal with that other doctor to work together by telling her the truth. Because she said, I've got all of these readings. This thing is not living off of him, just what you're feeding him, because it can't. It continues to grow, and there's no way that this thing can live off of what you've been feeding him. So she says, I know you're keeping something secret from me. So she makes a deal with that other doctor to tell her the complete truth, and he sneaks her into this other part of the complex, right? She sneaks him into this other part of the complex, and when that was going on, I was like, I guarantee you they are feeding that thing people. That's exactly what I said. And sure enough, there's this big cage-like thing, and you see them bringing Konstantin unconscious because they give him medicine to knock him out, right? So you see them bringing Konstantin in there, and then they brought what was obviously a prisoner out of a truck and tied his hands and put him down on the floor, and that thing came and ripped him to shreds while she's watching with binoculars from the back of the other doctor's truck. And it made her throw up. She almost got caught because she threw up. One of the guards heard her puking in the car because it was pretty ugly. So, and I also gave myself a pat on the back because like 2 minutes before it, I'm like, I know them motherfuckers are feeding that thing people. So she is, of course, extremely pissed off now. She is disgusted. She threatens to leave. Like, what the fuck are you people doing? And that night, she goes back and she meets Konstantin that night because this is all really sick to her, and she wants, to tell him the truth. So she goes and she does before the next session where this thing comes out. She gets them to let him go on a jog with her because she wanted to be alone with him so that she could tell him, and she did tell him. And that night, when he told her to meet her like a couple hours before the usual happening, and that's when he admitted to her that he's known all along. Not only does he know, he is consciously aware of what the creature does while he's asleep. He can see it, he can feel it, the murders that it does, the things that it's done. And she's like, now she was pissed off at them, but now she's also pissed off at him because, like, you're like a monster too, right? How could you be doing this? And it's like, he wants to stay alive, and this is the stuff that's happened to him. So, it's like, what is he supposed to do? So she comes up with a plan that's like, well, if we can get away from here, I think you can help. I think that this thing is, and he's like, well, okay, well, we'll see about that. So the colonel, he ends up like telling her that, I know what you did. I know what you went and saw. I know that you went and saw us feeding him, the prisoner, and then kind of like, she's like, how could you do that? And he's like, does what you would expect. He shows her the like rap sheet, and he's like, we're only feeding it monsters, murderers and things like that. This person killed a 12-year-old girl, so we let the thing eat it. And it's like, listen, it's a very morally questionable justification for what you're doing. But people who want to do stuff like that are always going to find a way to morally justify it. So she tells him that night that she thinks she can help him if they can escape. She even gets the other doctor to assist in them coming up with a way to escape, because she thinks that she knows how to save him. Now that she knows what this thing feeds on, and she knows that, and what's sick about it all is like when the colonel told her that it feeds on cortisone, and the only way to get cortisone, that good amount of cortisone, is for a person to be scared, to be afraid. So that is why when they feed these prisoners to this creature, they let them see it. They want the prisoner screaming. They want the prisoner to be terrified, because that's what's going to put the most cortisol in the brain. So it's all pretty gross. So the next night, the colonel's like, I'll even take you. You ain't got to sneak around. I'll take you to the fence, and you can sit there and watch it. So she did, and she actually broke away from the colonel and was like, I'm going in. And she went in there with that creature and stood between it and the prisoner, and got its attention. And she could tell that this creature recognized her because Constantine knows her, right? So she actually got it to calm down a little bit. And then unfortunately that prisoner over there, he made a bunch of noise, and yeah, it did that thing. It ripped him to shreds. So the next day, though, she actually does engage the plan with the other doctor's help. Of course, I'm leaving stuff out. Y'all can see it yourself. But she does initiate the plan, and her and Constantine do escape with the doctor's help, and they take off. But only after, because the colonel's up on all this shit. Ain't nobody sneaking nothing by this guy, right? So he intervenes right when they get outside, and that dude lets that thing out. And let me tell you, I know it was like a body count of 40 of the special military ops guys are ripped to shreds by this thing. And it even rips the colonel's arm off. And him and her run. But he gets, as the day goes on, they're going down the road, he gets sicker and sicker because he can't live without this thing. They're connected. And the thing can't live without him. So she ends up stopping and pulling him out of the truck, and and it's like, I guess we have to go back. And he's like, yes, we have to go back but that's okay, because here comes the colonel not far behind them. And he pulls up, and she's like, I understand. And basically it's like, I'm sorry that we thought we knew how to handle this, but they have to be together. I don't think there's anything else. If he's going to live, they have to be together. So the colonel is like, yes, I think so too, and it'll be all right, But he's just faking because he wants to kill her. And he starts trying to kill her, and they had brought the creature out and had laid it down on the road in the box. And it was coming out to go back to Constantine. And Constantine does have control over it because, he got it riled up real quick. And next thing you know, it had killed the 4 or 5 soldiers that were standing around it, and was all of a sudden on top of the truck, jumped over her, And what it did to that colonel was like, I didn't see that coming, because it's like, it took, instead of splitting his head down in half like this way, it split his head down in half this way. So it was like entire face and the front of his head was gone. And then, of course, she went over there to help Constantine, and the creature crawled over there and got back in him, which they didn't show that, which I actually appreciate that they didn't show that. Because, see, I've seen it coming out. Since I've already seen it coming out, I don't need you to show me it going back in. And that was a gross enough scene to see it coming out. Which they do show that at the beginning of the movie. So you could use your imagination. Well, you didn't need to. You've already seen what happens when it was pretty gross. But so she's like, we'll figure something out. Once the creature gets back in him, he starts feeling better. And it's like, we'll figure something out. And then that's when he says that he already has. And that's when he tops himself right in front of her, kaboom. And she didn't see that coming. We all did, though, because we saw him eyeing that gun that the colonel dropped. Or that she dropped. I think she was holding a gun on the colonel, and he talked her out of it by promising her everything would be okay. But they showed you him eyeing that gun. So I wasn't really surprised when he shot himself. But that was pretty sad. Now, to understand the ending, because if I told you the ending, then, well, that was the ending. But if I told you the prologue, you wouldn't understand if I didn't say this. But back in the movie, we had learned that he had, unbeknownst to him at the time, he had gotten some girl pregnant, and she had a kid like 7 years ago, or almost 7 years ago. And she didn't tell him until it was like 2 years old or something. And when she was dying, and he didn't tell anybody, and he let the kid go to an orphanage, be taken to an orphanage. So he kept it secret because he wanted to be a national hero, a cosmonaut. And it would ruin his career if people knew he had a kid out of wedlock. You see what I'm saying? It was that kind of shit. So he's dead. And the prologue is that she goes and gets his kid out of the orphanage to raise herself and not be an orphan baby, because that's what she was. So they added that little bit of human part to it. And that was Cosmonaut. Cosmonaut? It was a cosmonaut. The movie is called Sputnik. About a cosmonaut. That was Cosmonaut. No, that was Sputnik. About a cosmonaut with a really nasty symbiote in it that is... Where did that fucking thing come from? It lives in our atmosphere? It's an alien? I don't know. They don't tell you where this thing come from, but it was some kind of space alien. Or terrestrial alien, maybe, of some kind. But this isn't Neptune or Venus with an atmosphere like that, so I don't know. I don't know where the thing came from. But it obviously didn't arrive on a ship. Was it like a... I don't know. I don't know where the creature came from. But it was in the cosmonaut when he crashed. Or it got in him. Because, yeah, it wasn't something that was already in him, because we saw when it attacked him and the other cosmonaut. Something went wrong. They crashed. Something was like on the outside of the space capsule, broke in there on him, ate the other guy's brain, but didn't go in him. Instead chose him. They did find out why, though. She found out why it chose him instead of the other guy. The other guy had a small tumor on his kidney and a propensity for cancer. The creature obviously knew that, even though the guy didn't. He, however, was clean health-wise, so the creature actually chose him over the other one because of that. So those are other little tidbits in the movie. It's an excellent little space horror movie. Even though you don't really know where this thing came from. But yes, the slipcase has a, got this with the slipcase. And you can read subtitles if you want to, but it's English dubbed, and the dubbing is absolutely perfect because it was the actors themselves who came back and looped the film, which is what they call when you come in and dub something. So they came in for looping, and it's the actors themselves that dubbed their own roles. So, yes, they've got a Russian accent, but then again, they're supposed to. This is 1983's Russia. That's where this is set. So, but it's an excellent dub from the actors themselves. So is that really a dub then, if it's actually them? They're just speaking in English? The movie itself was released in Russian, though. I don't know why I'm getting so technical with this shit. But that was Sputnik. It was fantastic. It was a really good movie. It's like an 8 out of 10 to me. I had a lot of fun with this movie. I mean, it kept me like glued to the screen. Because this is one interesting looking creature that comes out of this dude. And it's a shame. But it was also vicious. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I don't know what would have happened if he hadn't have topped himself. So that was kind of weird. But yeah, Sputnik, Day 7. If you've seen this or know of this, let me know in the comments. Never mind. But yeah, let me know in the comments. And I'll see you in our conclusion. Love you, miss you, bye. Always remember, never forget, you're a very, very special person. And I will see you in Day 8. Bye-bye.